from the top down, we must be inclusive.
You have to be loud. You have to be different. The audiences are demanding it.
Hi everybody, I'm Rebecca San, Senior Editor on Diversity and Inclusion at the Hollywood Reporter. And I have the great pleasure today to moderate this next panel with four incredibly impressive and very dynamic women whose work in the entertainment industry is making a very significant impact. Just as a reminder, today's conversations are sponsored by Starz Take a Lead, which is Starz' commitment to amplifying narratives by, about, and for women and underrepresented audiences. In other words, one of the few people who are still doing that in 2024. Several times a year, Starz hosts transparency talks such as this one, bringing together leaders across industries to bring relevant and interesting discussions about women and underrepresented audiences to the forefront. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly introduce our esteemed panelists. First up, we have Jessica Sarowitz, who, and just coming up, Jessica, she's a social impact investor, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, and Jessica created Vera Flores Films to bring awareness to the stories of marginalized groups and to amplify the voices of inspiring women through documentary films. And you're currently working on building a $250 million full-fledged studio in Baldwin Hills. The Jungle Hunter. If you could sit down, because I know it's super awkward to be talked about while I do this. I should have told you and I'm sorry. She seeks out projects around the world that directly benefit people of color with much needed facilities and resources. So thank you, Jessica. She's truly a badass. Okay, so it's a very awful to stand here. So next we will have Stacey Walker-King, who's the Chief Brand Officer at the Macro. She oversees Iowa career and brand strategy, marketing, and experiential activities for Macro, which I think you guys know, multi-platform media company. She created and launched the company's annual events, such as a Macro Lodge at Sundance, if any of you were fortunate to go, a Macro HBCU Summit, and the Macro Pre-Oscars Party, which is coming up. So, and she began her career in the fashion and beauty sector. Okay, next we have Heather Zolke from another Jennifer Eastbox family. She's the independent showrunner of BMF. Prior to that, she were under a 2-year deal at Starz, where she was the showrunner of Intercepted. She was a co-EP on Kevin Williamson's streaming show Tell Me a Story, and co-EP for 3 seasons on Power. Before that, she wrote on all 5 seasons of John Wells' critically acclaimed Southland. Okay, that's what's written, but I love Southland. Amazing show. And she shared in the Peabody Award that they wrote into it, and then they won into baseball. Last but not least, Lala Anthony at She's starring in Power and Starz and is EP along with the 50 Cent on her project about her likeness and Toya Brown, which will also be for the network. She will star in the indie drama 9 Bullets with Lena Headey and Sam Worthington, and has teamed up with Issa Rae to EP the upcoming horror-con with Juju. On top of all of that, you are currently adapting the Love Playbook into a TV series. All the ladies. So now it's going to get more organic, and you'll hear from them themselves. A lot of accomplishments to get through. So I wanted to start out, because this is about things that you wish you knew. You know, I'm going to ask you to kind of take a trip back and really think about a lot of things in hindsight. Let's start at the beginning. This is a question for everybody. How would you characterize your early experiences navigating your career as a woman or a woman of color? And what do you feel were the factors that contributed to the type of experience that you had in your starting out? Anybody can start with, if you wanted to call somebody. Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, so what was really wonderful for me is that my first real job boss was a female, and she gave me a lot of support and confidence in managing other people. So that was key, and I always say that trying to find someone who is in a leadership role and connect with them in some way, talk to them, even if it's, at the coffee, lounge or whatever, and just ask them, how did you get here? What was your trajectory like? And, if you can, ask, could you once in a while talk to me and give me a little bit of guidance? Most people are very open to that.
I'll go next. So, I think that, well, first of all, I'll just say this. I've had all the jobs. I've done so many different jobs. And I know one of the things that I've actually been a little blessed because I have worked, I was in the fashion and beauty industry. I've, like you said, Jessica, I've always reported to women. Just like I've had so many women like bosses along the way. I'll say, though, that for me, one of the things just, kind of my experience, and it could be, being a woman, being a person of color, being from the South, but when I first started my career, I honestly did not feel like there was anything short of illegal that I could not do. So there was not a boundary that I set for myself, or I just didn't realize that was the thing. And interestingly enough, I looked at a lot of women around me, and they were the same. We worked really, really hard. We worked quietly. We were like, go to the bathroom and cry, we'd get back here and get back to work. And, it was like, this was the thing that we did. So I'll say that, for that, what I am, grateful for in that experience is just that, I know what it takes to get things done. And what I'm also grateful for is that now we live in an environment, society where I can raise my hand and say, this is too much. This is this is not a sustainable thing. So I'd say that's been kind of like the learning that I've had from when I started to now.
For me, I think a lot of times to break into business, you think you need to know somebody. But I didn't know anyone. I was interning, the Universal Law, the UTA job list came in, and I didn't know anybody. And I've always taken a lot of pride that I got hired for being me and for what I brought to the table. And at that time, my work experience was 5 years at Polly's Pies. Okay? So you don't need to know anyone. And I think one of my mentors, John Wills, he said you have 30 seconds to impress someone. So if you have that moment where you're gonna meet your icon or the person that you wanna work with, you need to know your story. As a writer, I always have to know the log line for the show or the thing that I'm pitching. So know your story so you can have your 30 seconds to impress someone. And don't be ashamed of your story, and don't compare yourself to other people. And your journey is very different than every other single person in this room.
So for me, I started my career at 16 years old interning at a radio station, and having great mentors kind of guide me in those beginning days. And that's why I'm such an advocate and a fan of internship programs and mentorship and fellowships, because it really does work and you really get to see everything. There's no job that I didn't do or that I couldn't do. So definitely want to say to everyone out here to be advocates of internship programs and really take young people under your wing and teach them, because they want to learn. They're hungry for the knowledge, and I learned everything about radio from the inside out. And as my career continued to grow, I had so many skills that my peers didn't have from my internship days. So I will always be screaming internships, fellowships, mentorship. So that really guided me and helped me throughout my career.
What the presentation was, this is already so much good advice. Now, because this is a professional women's summit specifically about the entertainment industry, I wanted to maybe start to get at some of, maybe are there unique challenges that exist about this business that, particularly for, Jessica and Stacey, because you guys have worked outside of this sector, that your past professional experiences could be argued for, but also, for anybody, if you want to talk about what are some of the unique challenges, because this is a strange business, and so I think that there's a lot that universally affects women in every workplace, but there are some things that specifically affect women in this workplace, and we talk about that.
I think from B, I'll jump in. I think from B, for so long, I was afraid to use my voice. It was just be quiet and do the work. Just be quiet and do the work, and don't talk, don't complain, don't use your voice, don't say anything. And as I became more confident in my career, I learned to use my voice and how important my voice was. For so long, I also felt like I didn't belong. They're gonna figure it out one day and I'm not supposed to be here. How did I even get here? I don't belong in these rooms. And I still sometimes deal with that, really feeling like I belong, and really stepping into that confidence and that power of saying, like, I worked hard enough, I belong here, my voice really does matter. So just encouraging everyone to use your voice, that it does matter. Don't let people, quiet that voice, because in the beginning stages, I was very just quiet, head down, like no one cares about what I have to say, and people do. Your voice really does matter.
So I'm going to get real loud because I'm going to tell you that, okay, you see the way I look, I'm short, I'm a woman of color, Afro-Latina, and I'm married to a white male who is very tall, he's 6'6". And when we're both in the room, it's really fascinating, the stereotypes and how people perceive, okay, who do I pitch? Well, who gets the first pitch? Who do you think gets the first pitch? And what's really fascinating is when my husband says, well, then go and talk to my wife afterwards, which really, you gotta do your homework. You gotta know who to pitch. You gotta know their background and what they're really passionate about. Like, look at the projects they've done in the past and how, they've connected to the project, how they, really supported the project. Because if you get that wrong, you just turn me off. And that's the reality sometimes of what happens. So, I just want to lift that out.
Especially in the staff community. Because this is an age-based, a perception-based business, and so I think the onus is, there's even more of an onus for those in the industry who want to see just sort of a more equitable future, to try to be at least aware of your own perception biases and begin to dismantle them. I wanted to also be able to, I want any question for Lala specifically. You're somebody who works both behind and in front of the camera, so I'm hoping you can maybe address the power dynamics that are related to being female talent. Oftentimes you are the face of a project or a production, and so people might talk about perception, they perceive that you're the boss and you're calling the shots and making decisions. Is that true? And if not, how do you make that a reality? How do you influence your power as a female talent?
Yeah, so as the face of a project, no, you're not necessarily in charge. It is, you're the face of the project. Doesn't mean like you created the project and you're making all the decisions behind the project, but that's when you get into more of a leadership role and start producing and finding projects that you're passionate about, to where you can be the shop caller and make the decisions, or you can partner up with people like Heather, who value what you have to say and want to be collaborative in making amazing shows like what we did with Powell, what we did with BMF, what we're doing with BMF. Season 3 premiere March 1st. We do great things together. You find people that, you can work with together and your voice will be heard. So it is different, but I love being behind the scenes and producing, because in that space I'm able to have more of a say and more of a power position. But it is cool to see your face on a billboard as the face of a certain project as well. We got nothing like that. So cool. I love that, by the way. So a little bit of both for sure.
I love that for you. It really does. And let's keep on the topic of representation, because again, the product of what this industry does is to create these images and these narratives. And so for everybody, you guys are all storytellers in your respective capacities. How do you believe the portrayal of women, specifically female leaders? Are there portrayals of people that there's few, but you're there? How do you think that how female leadership is portrayed in film then impacts the reality of society, gender roles in society? Just a minor sluffness.
Yeah. No, I'll weigh into this. Well, I know that there's not enough representation of women as, people in STEM jobs. Women as, good, great scientists, or doing incredible things on behalf of humanity. Or, we don't want to see, always the female being the helper, the hooker, or some druggy, I don't know. we want to see empowered women on film with diverse stories.
I think there's, to your question, Rebecca, I just am always just really in awe of how I honestly believe this to my core, that narrative change sparks social change. And I think of things that I have seen along my life, and I continue to see that how it really does create like an opportunity of mind. It unlocks something different. You see it, and it's like, I can now be that. So I think that, as you're saying, I think there's, yes, definitely so many different ways that we need to be growing. Like I want to see more. But I'm always just really just so in awe that when I see, you see it on the screen, but then also when you learn about, the producer behind it, like all of this, just knowing that these women that I'm on the stage with exist, it inspires me. I mean, I executive produced my first show last year. And I was going to sing for a while. Thank you. But there were just things where I never thought I would ever do something like that. And then just knowing like that is something that exists, like I can do that. So I think it still happens for me as well.
I think too, as a writer, we avoid writing scenes with women just talking about men and the relationship stuff. Or, okay, what are our characters' dreams? What do they want to do? What do they still want to do? So we always fight for that in the writer's room.
It's pretty amazing because in real life, I have a lot of conversations that don't involve men. And so,
Well, I'm single right now, so I've been talking about men a little too much, I think, but I do understand what you're saying. It's not just all about men, but all jokes aside, I'm very grateful to, I wanted to speak about Heather and just her creating dynamic characters, because when I came over to BMF to play Markeisha, it could be looked at as just another drug dealer girlfriend, but Heather made me understand that the character is so dynamic. There's so many layers to this character, and she wrote her in a way that is so dynamic, that's so powerful, and it's important for viewers to see that and be inspired by that. And you get past what you see on the surface, and you realize there's a real story here. There's real struggles that all women can relate to in this character. So shout out to Heather for being able to write these characters the way she does.
And intergenerational is empathy, right? That's, I think, that everybody in this room really, understands the importance of that. I'm going to stick with Heather and ask you, I'm imagining that there's probably some writers in this room. I want to know, what are some of the formative experiences that you've had, coming up in the writer's room and on the set of some truly iconic series? I mean, go look up Heather on IMDb. You'll see, if you don't already know, so what are some of those formative experiences that really directly shaped how you staff a room and how you run a show today?
Yeah, so I started as a PA when I was 22, and I got my first writing job when I was 27. And so as a young female, a young fly female on set, sometimes I found myself marginalized by the directors, hey sweetie, hey baby, Jink has made things not discussed of me, and then unfortunately, don't assume that your female bosses are always going to be rooting for you either, unfortunately. So, there is a slice of the pie for everybody, so it's okay to share. We're not holding, and again, I worked at Polly's Pie, so I won't pay the next But the thing I think that has transformed me most when I was... So, I am the showrunner of BMF, and for those of you who don't know what that is, it's Black Mafia Family. Thank you. I did not create the series, Randy Huggins did. He is a black man from Detroit. Detroit all day. And he had a health complication at the end of season 2, and I was his right hand. And so now I have stepped in, and Randy really empowered me season 2. And it is a huge gift and also responsibility as a white female running Black Mafia Family. So being able to empower women of color in the way that Randy empowered me has been one of my greatest gifts. I inherited Randy's room, and I wanted to keep that on the staff that Randy had, but making sure it's balanced with directors, getting people approved to shadow, and our partners in Stars and Lionsgate have been great. I mean, they approved, I had asked for 3 women of color just to be approved to shadow last year. 8 yourself on and we can always do better, so you can always ask. That's what I wanted to. Now I'm in a position, I have the power to change people's lives by asking. So just ask. They might say no, but they usually say yes. So, and you want to look for that one yes.
Speaking of Heather, you spoke of Randy, you spoke of John Wells. The great John Wells is another mentor. I want to talk about now mentorship and allyship and that type of support for everybody. What has been the role, or what kind of presence has mentorship, allyship, played in your career, either as you were coming up or even on the other side? How do you implement that? The reason why I specifically want to ask this is that mentorship always comes up in panels like this, but it's really nice to give specific examples and to really, sort of show people, give people ideas of strategies that they can implement either now if you're in a position of leadership or in the future when you become a boss.
Okay, I'll go first. In terms of mentorship, what I try to do is to always ask, well, who did you consider as part of the pool? Because if I see that it's only men, I'm like, this is not acceptable. Go back and find me, what, are you kidding? Well, we don't have to go. That is not to go. Well, tell me, and I do check on this. Believe me, I have to do it. I'm always doing it. And making sure also that there's diversity. Did you go to this community? Did you go to this association? Did you go here? Did you go to this university? And make sure that they know that there's scholarships and mentorships available. And that we pay. And we pay well for these positions. Because we understand that you shouldn't have to work for free. We're sorry. Or we live in so make sure it's a fair compensation for the work that they're going to do for us, and make sure that you go to different diverse communities and find people who are interested in this job.
I want to ask something that just occurs to me is that, how would you advise somebody who, if they're coming into this business, they truly don't know anybody and they don't have the, sort of fortune of being in a supportive environment. There's nobody who's offering to mentor them. How would somebody there, seek a mentor? How do you ask for somebody to mentor you? Where do you look if somebody doesn't sort of naturally avail themselves?
Good question. So for me, because I'm thinking about back to the 16-year-old me, I had a passion for music. So I was going where the music was. I wasn't going because I wanted to find a mentor. I was going where the music was. So the music led me to the opening of the Wu-Tang Clan's clothing line. They had a clothing store in Atlanta. When I went there, I saw people hanging their posters on the walls. And I was like, this is cool. What is this? I was like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we interned with this radio station. And we put up signage in different places. I was like, I could do that. That seems easy enough. So I got the number 5 for the internship. And through the process, then I started identifying who could the mentors be in that space. But it was my love for music, my passion that got me in the door. And then I saw people that I was like, this could be a good mentor. And what you have to do is not be afraid to ask. Not be afraid to ask. Not be afraid again, going back to using your voice. So at that time, I met Shaka Zulu, who's Ludacris's manager, still to this day. And I said, can I intern for you? Can I be your personal intern? And lucky enough, he said yes, and that's how the career started and everything started going. So I think following your passion is the first thing to get in the door, and then just paying attention and seeing this person, I feel their vibe, this could be it, and not being afraid to use your voice and ask what's the worst that can happen. Like I just said, they're gonna say no. All right, cool. I'm moving on to the next person. No has never scared me. I love it no, because I'm like, well, to you, I'm gonna take a risk. I love it. No, can't do that. Oh, for real? Okay, cool. Let me show you. So that's how that's how I would go.
I'll like answer, don't be afraid to ask, but also I'll just add on to that, don't be afraid to do.
Yeah.
And don't be, don't come into it with an expectation of, because I think this is one thing that I have seen that people, I want you to mentor me at this, I want you to meet me every time that I'll think, and it's like, but I don't even know I said all the things that I'm giving you, but I don't really know anything about how you work, do you follow through? Like, I don't know anything about you. It's a huge ask. So I think that the way that I've seen it work the best is it sounds like what you did, which you didn't say you did, but we can read through and see that that's what you did, which is you also were like, I'm available. I'm here and I'm available. Y'all need this, let me just fill in here. And I think that is a big part in this, is because I really do look at a mentorship type relationship. That is a sacred relationship right there. That is us putting our trust in each other. And I think that, a lot of times mentees and potential mentees, may not realize the gravity of what you're asking. So that's just, what I will add to. Also be, just make yourself available to be there for this person you're asking for advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do think if you're in a position of asking for mentorship, especially if you're asking of somebody who is fairly big, be specific in your ask. That's really helpful. Be specific in your ask and considerate of timing and things like that. Okay, so now
Can I just say one blessing to that? I'm just thinking of a person that I had mentored. When I first met her is at this HBCU summit that we do. And I met her and she was like, I just want to stay in touch with you. I want to enter. I want to do these things. And I was like, well, stay in touch. And if I don't get back to you right away, don't get offended. There's a lot going on, but just stay in touch. And this young lady, Cameron with a K, I'm never going to forget her for the rest of my life. But she would check in with, hey, I saw you doing this thing, that's amazing, great, not asking you for anything. But always like, if you need anything, I can help. You're doing another summit, I can, this just constantly that. So then when it came around to the internship, she's the first person I thought, yes, have it again. When she was interning with us, she kept checking in with, okay, I'm working on this, I just want to let you know what I'm doing. Internship ends, she goes on. I just think so fondly of like, I saw the way she worked. And that was like 2 years ago. She just called last week just to be like, just want to let you know what I'm doing and I'm up for this job. And I'm like, I don't know someone there, but I know someone who does. So but I'm like, I know her. I trust her. I want to, so I think there's just that piece also of just staying connected and, just always show.
Yeah, can I just add one more thing? What everyone's describing here is a relationship. You cannot mentor someone who jumps out, period. You have to have some sense of who this person is, what do they bring to the table? What are their skill sets? And that only happens in a relationship. And so if you think that you're just gonna waltz up to, someone and say, be my mentor, probably not gonna happen right away. You have to keep in touch. You have to ask them, you just said, I saw you here, I saw you there, let me tell you what I'm doing, and, you're gonna be at this event, can I come and just support you? That's a relationship. And so, that's the thing that links sometimes, that people forget. That's really important.
Now I'm going to tell you about a subject, and I'm thankful that all of you guys gave me permission to go there, is, you're all working parents, working moms. And so I want to know sort of how has, parenting impacted your career? And sure, it feels like it made me a more creative person, that's all great, but also what were the professional considerations, the concerns? We still live in a world where is there was a panel on male leadership, then that question probably would come up. How are you balancing being a working dad? Yeah, let's wrap that up. I'm great working dad for now. But anyways, in general, how do you know, what are the considerations there? And the real, what's the reality of it?
Right. So let me just start by saying this. My husband and I had to go through fertility to get pregnant and for us to have a family. Then we were blessed with two lovely children. We had twins, boy, girl. So they're 21 years old now, and it's wonderful. But in those moments, it was a decision of, do I keep working? Do I give up my position? I was making a lot of money at the time. Because I needed to do this. This is my vision for how my life would unfold. And it's very topical now because of what we're experiencing in, Alabama and the fertility issue and in all these other states in terms of women's rights to their own body, to their own, health care issues around getting pregnant and so on, and abortion and so on. So, because I understood this, I made sure that the benefits that are being received by our, the people that we employ, that I particularly ask, what kind of benefits are they eligible to receive in this state or that state, because I have to, conform with the law of fertility. It's wrong. But if it's not there, then what do I need to do to make it available? If someone were to come to me and say, I'm experiencing this situation. So that's one thing that I think is very topical right now, that we as women leaders can take that extra step to ask and make sure that we have the right benefits structure.
So I spent 10 years, off of the outside of the home career track. And I have two boys. It was so important for me to go back to work, to come back to work. One, because, we started Acro and now it's our family business, so I better get to working. But, it also was just important for me, for my boys to see their mom. And then, and also to see just all women, to see me working, there's things that I'm working for, and to see me fulfilled. And to see me with my own pursuits that are outside the world. So that is something that, I think is there like a really, really important thing to me. I think there's one thing that I think all women need to do, moms especially need to do, and we have got to give ourselves and each other grace. Every woman that I know is doing the absolute best that she can. And we are our own, our harshest critics always. And moms, we're the worst because we're trying to do all the things and feel like we're not doing any of them right or enough. And that must stop, and it has to start with us. But, it was just really, it was very, very important for me, for my kids to see, how, to see me at work. It just was.
My son, I have a freshman and a 7th grade daughter, a 13-year-old. And I started really traveling to produce when they were really little for Power. And I wanted to be a writer since I was 15, so there's no way in hell I was giving this up. That wasn't even a conversation. So my husband, he's really, really supportive. The only thing I do in the kitchen is the dishes, so that's been really nice. And we have grandparent help. I still live where I was born and raised. My mom's here, my sister. Everybody's really lucky to have grandparents involved. And I think you always want to be at a certain spot in your career before you have the baby, but those things don't happen, and I had to ask for permission. I was always living in fear about, can I leave at 2 o'clock? Can I leave early for my kid's Christmas performance, right? And I lived in fear, literally. I've been in the business 24 years, so now it's been 22 where I haven't had that fear of asking to leave. So now in our writer's room, I've told everybody, You tell me when you're leaving. You don't have to ask for permission. You have a doctor's appointment, go. You have your kid's performance, go. There's a lot of people in our writer's room. The work will get done. And you have to set boundaries for yourself because the work is always going to be there. I can work 7 days a week, every week if I want to, but setting boundaries and self-care. I'm getting a facial tonight, so.
Honestly, Heather took the words right out of my mouth. It's about boundaries. It's about, having your own boundaries because you can just work. I have one son, Kyan Anthony, and he trumps everything for me. He comes first for me. So God's willing, there'll always be another word thing, another TV series, another producing thing, which I'm grateful for that. But there's not going to be always another graduation, another basketball game, and I'm not going to miss it. I'm not going to miss it. So I had to put those boundaries in place for myself and understand that I used to be in fear, like Heather said, that I'm going to lose my job. Somebody's going to come take my job. Now I'm not afraid to say, hey, my son is graduated. I have to be there. This moment is never going to repeat itself. And he's going to remember that. He's not going to remember mom was shooting BMF today. He's going to remember that when mom was there for me. So that's important, and having those boundaries and just being able to communicate, but also, working hard is what I know and what has inspired my son. And when he talks to me about what he's learned from watching his mom, it is hard work and discipline. He just started a clothing line, and he's like, Mom, I saw you do that. I wanted to do the same thing. So to see his entrepreneurial spirit starting to grow is incredible. Our kids watch everything that we do, and sometimes we forget that. They're watching everything. So I want to be the right example of a mom who worked really hard, but was never too busy for him.
I really want that too, to that. And I will say too, because this was sort of a side mention that got a lot of response in the room, that it's not always a given that female leaders are going to be the ones who are providing that space, right? So I say that because we live in a patriarchal society and there's things in trouble with that stuff. So just to advocate, you can be that leader, right? You can create, even if you don't come up under a supportive female leader, you can change things for that. And I think that that's what these 4 women have done. Okay, we have just a few minutes left, so I want to ask just a couple more questions. First, because there are women of color and people who work with people of color, women of color on this panel, it's undeniable. I think nobody on this stage will deny that there has been a retrenchment. The pendulum has swung back from all of these commitments that were made in terms of inclusion in 2020. So I want to know, how as leaders, how are you addressing this within your respective positions, and just what can you do even if you're not a leader to sort of keep us from going back to the dark ages? Easy solutions.
Okay, so I sit on probably 7 boards. And one of the things I try to do is make sure that if there's a DEI officer, that I talk to that person. And just to make sure they're doing okay and they're not burnt out. That's one thing. Also, I make it known to the board and the president, executive leader, whatever, that this is important to me. And I'm going to speak up because I don't like to suppress people, right? But I will be that voice that will speak up. And all my board member friends, I need your support. And so that's one thing we can do. Also, just to also understand that for me personally, I just need people to have good benefits. And I need the right culture to exist. At the end of the day, if you call it belonging, or if you call it DEI, or I don't care. I mean, what people care about is, am I getting a fair wage for the work that I do, right? They care about having access and opportunity. They care about career development. They care about a good boss. You know, we don't need these toxic bosses. So do that work. Be intentional about creating the right culture of inclusion, the right culture of helping each other, sharing knowledge, so that, you know, you're not hoarding knowledge within your own institution. That's what's important.
I love having this. I'm just so thankful for the composition of this panel, because that kind of like real executive advice is so tangible and so specific. Anything else would like to? And let me just ask my last question, so that way you guys can answer both or either. Is as leaders, because this is a room of future women leaders of the entertainment industry, or present. I'm not going to judge. But you know, how do you ensure equity for women in your organization or on your production who don't already have the power that you have?
I think it's, you know, keeping an open door and letting know that people can come and speak to you. I right now am able to help raise up the next generation of showrunners. And because our writers are it's Black Mafia family, I am the minority in the room. And I get to sit back and listen and really try and walk in other people's shoes, developing that radical empathy, understand what people have been through. The writers' room is like therapy. You know, we bleed in that room. We share our stories. So even right now, we're doing spinoffs, you know. I'm not going to do those by myself. I'm going to do them with writers that call it This is Black Mafia Family. All of our writers are going to be approved to be on set. So you can't be a showrunner until you know how to produce, you know? And our cast deserves to collaborate with writers that reflect them in their stories, not just me, you know? So again, it's just ask, push.
Okay, so I have just two things to say about it, because I want to go back to the DEI question as well. But one thing that I would just say about how we create and, you know, keep equity for women in our workplace. So for Macro, this is just the ethos that our company was built on, was representation. It's just what we do. I mean, I think when you walk through our offices, people that come into it, they talk about that they've never seen something like this that exists. So, you know, I think that is something, not that we're like perfect by any means, but just we don't have like a corporate culture that we're trying to, you know, heal and recreate, you know, that this was why our company was really founded. So that is not as much an issue for us. And I would say that, like, you know, we have, you know, more women in, you know, in positions of power in our company than we have men. So it just, you know, something that's just the way this company exists. But the thing that I wanted to say back to the DEI question, so one of the other things just in our group, I mean, yes, as you talked about in my bio, like we create these incredible activations and galvanize the community and all that, but we do also just, you know, I run our in-house agency, and we consult with a lot of different corporations that, you know, on their like cultural strategy, creative strategy. And I will just say this about DEI, to this rollback, it's just bad business. We create the culture there, and like anyone that is moving away from this, every single one of these companies wants to reach underrepresented groups. That is just, this is the new majority. This is what America not is going to look like. This is what it looks like. This is not what the world is going to be. It's what it is. So when I see these rollbacks, I am like, you are not stopping progress by any means. And I think that, like, for us, how we just understanding that we have that power, and we need to just work together. I mean, I love that Macro can work with the Gold House or Black House or Latinx, like all of these different organizations. And we're really coalescing power and letting them know you can't erase us, you can't ignore us, and you don't want to.
I would say, like, you don't have to be in a quote unquote powerful position to be powerful. each one of us in this room are powerful because we have a story that we want to tell, a story that needs to be heard. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you that opportunity. In this day and age, we can all tell our story however we want. Put a camera in front of you, just put it on YouTube. However, there's so many ways to get our stories out here. And I think for so many of us, we're just waiting for someone to like come get us or give us the opportunity. Man, kick that fucking door down and tell your story. Don't wait for anybody. We all have access and resources to do that, and I just want to empower everybody in this room not to wait. It's never going to be the right time. There's always going to be something else that has to get done or something else that's important. Just tell your stories. Get your friends together, sit in a room, put a camera on, and just start talking. So many amazing things come out of those kind of conversations. So be creative, and all of us here are powerful and impactful in many, many ways. Praise God!
That's a perfect note to end on, to take home with that winner. So thank you all for your